I'm gonna be completely honest. I can't tell if I'm in shock and awe, or I didn't think that we would hear the name Rooster Teeth once again. So apparently, Rooster Teeth is coming back, and one of the founders, Bernie Burns, has actually bought the studio back from Warner Brothers Discovery after having this sort of history, or this tumultuous history of ownership around how Rooster Teeth was run, who it was owned by, and a bunch of other things going on. So apparently Rooster Teeth is back and they're working on some new stuff. So let's actually sit down and talk about it. So first and foremost, it's probably going to be a good idea to just talk about the ownership history, because there's a lot going on here as far as the ownership of Rooster Teeth kind of went. So basically, Bernie Burns was among the co-owners of the company alongside the other founders, Matt Hullum, Jeff Ramsey, Gus Sorolla, Joel Heyman, and Jason Solana. And what ended up happening was Bernie, I think they agreed to sell the company to Full Screen back in November of 2014, or rather, I guess, Rooster Teeth was acquired by Full Screen. Resource tools, they need to collaborate. So pretty much the idea was to fight against Netflix, HBO, and Amazon. Though, let's be completely honest, I don't think anyone watching Rooster Teeth was considering them as like a competitor to Netflix, HBO, and Amazon and things to that extent, especially when they did their first movie back in 2015 called Laser Team, which I do actually remember them raising money for and being able to do, which was really cool to see. And of course they were big in Extra Life, but after that ownership they went under Otter Media after the restructure of Full Screen back in December 2018, and then they were under Warner Media on January 31st 2019. People stepped down, people moved around, and then people were let go, and ultimately by the end of it were under Warner Media. And then of course Warner Media was then taken over by Warner Bros bought Discovery, and then they kind of merged together. And ultimately 20th anniversary was celebrated on April 1st 2023, and then less than a year later, rather 11 months later, the entire place shut down. And it's kind of unfortunate to see what had happened with Rooster Teeth, because originally when they opened up the channel on YouTube, the reason why they did that was because they were running their own channel with classic programming like Red vs. Blue and stuff like that, and ultimately more people were on YouTube than on their own website, and so they migrated their content over to YouTube, where they found great success. Ultimately though, they scaled up a little bit too much. There were too many personalities that people didn't really care about. They tried doing too many different types of programming, and I feel like ultimately everything just kind of fell apart to some extent. Now, with the return of Rooster Teeth, however, a hype video was actually made regarding actually the return of Rooster Teeth. So let's actually watch this video so we can kind of see Studio 5, which is where the Rooster Teeth studio was, rather is, I guess depends on how you want to look at it. Then we see a car pull up to Studio 5. We see a figure leaving the car, and from the back we can see that that's clearly Bernie Burns, because I feel like you can't just misunderstand who that is if you've seen him a lot. Scans the card, opens the door, and I think he says something to the effect of, wait, what does he say? Actually, let me just put the volume up a little, because I don't know if it'll actually I don't know if it'll pick up audio, because I didn't actually set that up.
Guys?
He says, guys,
Why the lights off?
why the lights off?
I'm back from getting milk.
I'm back from getting milk, and what the heck happened, I think? Drops his bag.
What the hell happened?
And then he says, what the hell happened? Yep, so I don't know if the mic actually picked that up, but yeah, it says under new management, and also the logo has lost a tooth. I suppose that's kind of also there's some meaning behind, getting beaten and battered through the years, still trying to survive, but I guess that really kind of depends on what you're wanting to look at that. Now, With that being said, however, it's kind of worth keeping in mind that other members of Rooster Teeth, or previously were part of Rooster Teeth, have gone off to do their own things, do their own sort of independent podcasts, or have come together to do some other separate thing, or maybe some of them have just kind of gone their separate ways altogether. And keeping in mind that they no longer own the rights to Red vs. Blue and Ruby anymore, because that was all sold off as part of Warner Bros. Trying to, claw back a bit more money from selling Rooster Teeth. They've had a tumultuous ownership history, but if I'm being completely honest, I'm actually incredibly hopeful for the future, because the thing is that I kind of want them to go back to what they used to do back between the years of 2008 to 2013. I feel like that was kind of the best years, and if I were to even decrease the years further, I would say 2011 to 2012 I think was kind of their best years. So I actually went back to the Rooster Teeth YouTube channel, which is back up and running because of Bernie Burns' ownership and stuff kind of going back under here. I looked at some of the stuff and I'm like, fails of the week, RT recap, shorts. Then I remembered they did shows like Immersion, and of course stuff like RT recap turned into AWU instead, so Achievement Hunter Weekly Update, RTAAs, or Rooster Teeth Animated Adventures, which there are also a lot of, compilations of on YouTube that I just used to kind of sit down and watch a lot. Rage Quit, that was something that I personally really enjoyed watching until it went under Achievement Hunter as well as a separate brand. They've done a lot of really good stuff, and I think at this point that I don't believe we've hit the time where they started making stuff like Immersion, but I do want to kind of see them kind of go back to what they kind of used to do. Again, they did some really cool creative stuff. Granted, while options back in the day weren't that plentiful, so it's kind of like one of those things, but stuff like RTAAs coming from RTP, so like Rooster Teeth Podcast Stories became Rooster Teeth Animated Adventures in the end. And so in my mind, the way that I look at all of this and think to myself is that I hope that they kind of go back and kind of rebuild everything from scratch, if I'm being completely honest, because I feel like that's the best way to go about doing all of this. I can't imagine what else Bernie would want to do with the Rooster Teeth name, and whatever branding is associated, because again, the ownership of stuff like RVB and Ruby are long gone now, and it's just crazy to think about what he's planning on doing, where everything is going. So in my mind, I'm incredibly hopeful for the future. The fact that I hope he kind of rebuilds everything from scratch, and that we look at the history of Rooster Teeth and actually pull from the actual names that we know and love from this company. And that's kind of where I'm a little bit worried if Bernie is able to bring back Gus, Jeff, Barbara, Gavin, all the names and faces that we know and love on the podcast, because Rooster Teeth was largely how would I describe it, a personality driven channel, and that's where like I said, RTAA and RTPs kind of came from, and then that would go on to be stuff like Fails of the Week, Rage Quit with Michael, and stuff like that, and then Immersion with just the guys in general, and then there's stuff like RT Life, just seeing things behind the scenes. So maybe they're more personality driven than I give them actually as much credit for. But with all that being said though, I am, like I said, hopeful for the future, but I'm not expecting too much. They've got their own little hype video. One thing that I'm really, really concerned about is I hope that this isn't another G4 TV. So actually, let me just do a quick Google of that. So for those of you guys that don't know, G4 TV was a channel apparently in America. I didn't actually know about this, but I always watch G4 shows on YouTube, and it was actually pretty entertaining stuff. Like Attack of the Show, I think, was one of those things that I watched a lot, which would then have like a segment like Around the Net, or ATN as everyone was calling it back in the day. But then they did in fact return. Like G4 did come back, only to then be shut down all over again a second time, because they tried to bring in newer personalities, and so even some of the older personalities just didn't quite feel the same. So I hope that Rooster Teeth doesn't fall under the same umbrella, but the problem then becomes it does bring an unwarranted not unwarranted, it's definitely warranted, but rather an unwanted comparison between the two. So it really does kind of make me wonder where everything is going to fall. And I know that this isn't really gaming news, but this is something that kind of really hits me in a place where I'm like, I really do kind of want to see things go back to how they once were. But just because things go back to where they once were doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be popular enough to continue going on. And that's where the concerns start to kick in. But with all that being said, however, I'm just curious to see, or rather hear what everyone kind of has to say about this. But with all that being said, however, let me know what you guys think about all of this in the comments below. Like the video if you like, to subscribe to the channel. I'm aiming for 500 subs by the end of the year. With all that being said, I do upload every day, so I'll see you guys tomorrow.